Now, here is a thought for the day from Larbert Baptist Church for the 15th of May. I want to quote some verses from the Epistle of James, chapter 1, verses 14 to 18. But each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. Then, when desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, brings forth death. Do not be deceived, my beloved brethren. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow of turning. Of his own will he brought us forth by the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. There's a contrast in the Epistle of James between the law of instinct and the law of God. So here are my divisions of the subject. The cause. In the law of instinct, each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires. In the law of God, of his own will, God's will, he brought us forth by his word of truth. Then secondly, the purpose. In the law of instinct, the purpose is pleasure, animal pleasure, any pleasure. But in the law of God, the purpose is the will of God, the ordering of all things by the word of God, and therefore the pleasure of the way of God. The third division, the fulfillment. In the law of instinct, the fulfillment is the short duration of the pleasure, the self-centered preoccupation with what each one desires. In the law of God, the administration of all that is set to us is fulfilled, the privilege and the calling of God to live for the well-being of the world. Fourthly, the analogy. In the law of instinct, the analogy of birth is used. Desire conceives. The conception, gestation lead to birth, and birth gives way to sin, and sin grows and grows and eventually reaches death. In the law of God, the analogy of birth is used. Of his own will, he brought us forth. The conception, gestation, and birth of pure, true, splendid creation. And fifthly, the progress. In the law of instinct, the progress never reaches higher than self's pleasure. The basic instinct never develops beyond anything finer than our pleasure. The demand within one's self is loud and abrasive and dominant. In the law of God, there are real blessings. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow of turning. It is pure, undiluted pleasure. And there is inward blessing. Of his own will, writes James, he brought us forth by the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. Of course, God does all things according to his own will and purpose, of course. So why does James make the point of his own will? He brought us forth not to make a point about God's power, but to make a point about God's purpose. God's purpose is blessing, is true happiness, is fulfillment beyond all that we can imagine or conceive. Here are the contrasts between the law of instinct and the law of God. Now there's a point worth debating and thinking about. Which is the prominent feature in our life? The law of instinct or the law